Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. Happy weekend. We are live. Welcome to episode 18 of season 1 of UXR Conversations. Delighted to be with you. If you don't know me yet, I am Noam Siegel. I'm Director of User Research at Wealthfront and also the guy who mostly wears tech t-shirts if he can afford to, because I hate to go shopping. So just telling you the truth. I should get these companies to sponsor me, though, although you can't see it, but there you go. Fast, great company. But anyway, let's get back to the point here. Who are the next billion users? What roles will technology play in their lives? How can we research and develop these 0 to 1 products for these communities, products that will serve them well? These are some of the questions on the minds of the people at Google's Next Billion Users, or NBU org, and I'm delighted to host one of them for this conversation. With me today in the studio is Tejas Peesapati. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Noam. It's a pleasure being here.
How are you today? Let's put your name up.
I'm doing great. We have a 2-year-old. He's keeping us busy. So yeah, it's going okay, I should say.
I can imagine. I have a couple of those little people. They can be challenging.
Humans are tough.
So I'd like to introduce you from what I know about you, and then you can add to that. So you're doing a few things. You're focusing on being both a researcher and a manager at Google at the Next Billion Users, specifically focused on research which is on economic opportunity within this organization. And you're trying to understand what it means to get people out of poverty and what role technology can play in that. You're overseeing research for a couple of products within NBU, like Kormo, which we'll maybe get into a bit later on, which is an app that helps people find jobs and build their careers in countries like Bangladesh, India, and Indonesia. I'll just say to everyone watching this, if you're interested in working on these kinds of groundbreaking products in developing countries, working for underserved populations, which is something I haven't done much of yet, and I'm personally interested in my career, you need to watch this episode. We'd love for you to join us and send us your questions. We're talking about building for the next billion users. You can send us your questions on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. YouTube is probably best. And if you've been enjoying these conversations and want to see more or just get updates on a lot more content coming, you can always subscribe at youtube.com/Noam Siegel. So all of that being said, first of all, did I miss anything in your introduction that you want to share with us?
No, this is great. That's great. Thank you so much for that.
Okay. Well, I know I did miss one thing, which I really would love to start with before we get to the whole Next Billion User stuff. And that is the fact that you are one of the founders, curators of uxcoffeehours.com. Check it out. Tell me what this is and how it started.
Yeah, so UX Coffee Hours is a platform where we connect mentees with mentors. And the idea is that, look, you and I, and a lot of people like us, we get a lot of messages on LinkedIn from students, because since we worked in the industry for a while, like, hey, I want to know about how do I get my first full-time role, or how do I get my first researcher designer role, or something like that. And with COVID, the times we are in is pretty unprecedented. Like, things are at a stage where, like, I'm getting and probably you and a lot of my friends are getting a lot of messages every day. So we thought, like, hey, let's just pull in all the efforts and then build a platform where we initially thought it was just 7 of us. We go online, put our office hours kind of thing, like we call it coffee hours, because we wanted to be casual. And we let it open for people to schedule time with us for an hour every week. Within, like, I don't know, we were 7 of us with like about everyone spending 2 hours on the platform. In 10 hours, we were booked for 2 months. For the next 2, we have the 60-day rolling availability. So then I went to, then we thought, like, hey, let's just bring in more people to do this one. It's like, how it's one of those pledges that people are taking now to spend at least an hour every week giving back to the UX community. And now we have 100 plus mentors. We grew from 7 to 100 in, less than 3 weeks. We have 100 plus mentors across 37 companies globally. And most of our mentors now are booked for the entire 2 months moving forward. So we're also coming up with new ways of engaging with people. We are doing short video series where we are pulling in all the frequently asked questions from our mentors, and then getting those questions answered by experts. Like recently, we came up with an episode on what kind of skills do interviewers look at when they interview a candidate. And this was answered by Susan Petrick, who is a seasoned research hiring manager at Google. So it's like we're looking for experts who know this area well and getting those questions answered by them.
So cool. And I would like to publicly say that I have not joined UX Coffee Hours yet as a mentor, but I will after this conversation. I think it's a marvelous initiative. And there are few things more important in your career than mentorship. And there are few things I think more fun and just deeply meaningful to do than to be a mentor. So I recommend it for anyone, and I will join you in your efforts. It's terrific.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
For sure. So that's UX Coffee Hours, and please do check it out if you're interested in being a mentor or a mentee. So I always like to start with kind of your journey in research, your journey to Google, and maybe focus a bit on the stops in your journey that you feel like prepared you and enabled you to do the sort of work you do today at the Next Billion Users.
Sure. Yeah, to get started, first of all, I'm a user researcher, and I am passionate about research in developing economies and building sustainable products that improve the lives of underserved populations around the world. And I've been at Google for 4 years now, and I'm part of this team called Next Billion Users. And our mission is to ensure that we bring in products and services that are tailored to people who are coming online for the first time. Like these are the new internet users, like first-time online users, right? And in terms of how my journey towards this role, right? There are a couple of things I could talk about. One is the professional way of looking at it, which I think I can technically read my LinkedIn profile and say, hey, here's what it is. Or I could go the personal route, which is what I think it's more interesting to talk about. So I grew up, I was born and raised in a small town called Bhadrachalam. It's in India. It's so small that we got our first traffic signal, I don't know, less than 5 or 6 years ago. So yeah, and there were a lot of issues that came with that thing. People didn't know what to do when there's a red light or orange light over there. So it's that small. And growing up in that town, and and studying computer science and HCI, I kind of came to an awareness that hey, technology can help people a lot in different ways, especially people in my hometown, people in towns like my hometown, right? So I always want to do something back to the community that I come from, or communities like the ones that I come from. But the thing about Bay Area is that we have so many interesting challenges that people work on, and in so many different companies. I just got onto the track. I worked on enterprise applications at Oracle, and on search at Yahoo, and I worked on app ads before coming to NBU at Google. So things were going really well. And 2.5 years ago or something like that, I guess, I felt terribly sick to an extent where I was hospitalized for a long time. And I spent a lot of lonely nights in the hospital, and all those sad things over. But that gave me an opportunity to do a lot of self-reflection. So during one of those nights, and I sat down and talked to me about like, hey, let me make a list of things that I felt like I should have done that I haven't done it so far. And one of those things is like I've always been passionate about giving back to the community, but I never did that full time. I did some projects here and there, but like never did full time. So I told myself if I ever get back to normalcy, I could probably look for opportunities that kind of give me this thing. So I got back. I'm doing pretty fine now. I'm on remission. But yeah, so when I got back, I look for opportunities that would help me, that are in line with the mission that I have in mind. And I looked around. Luckily, I didn't have to go beyond Google, because NBU as a team is known as the thematic leaders for this kind of topics and areas within Google and also outside Google. So I had a couple of coffee chats with Asif Baki and Nipa Jain, and we felt like it's a good fit. And then, okay, I just joined the team. So that's how I landed in this role at NBU team.
Incredible. What a story, and thanks for sharing that. And I think I speak on behalf of everyone watching this that we're glad you're doing better.
Thank you.
I just have to ask you two things. I mean, I want to acknowledge something. I'm currently working at Wealthfront, and our typical clients are, I'm not sure if you can really say the opposite of the people you are serving, but close enough. These are people who are very technologically savvy, very financially savvy. They are living in a developed country, although sometimes it doesn't feel like it these days. But in general, we are. And I'm just fascinated by what you're doing here, and I'd love for you to share two perspectives to give us a clearer view here. The first is I'd love you to share why it's important for your team to focus on the next billion users in the first place. And I know that you're speaking for yourself here and not for Google. I just want that to be clear to everyone listening. But still, and then I'd also love for you to share, from what you know about your users or potential users, what does it mean for them? What does it mean for them to have access to these tools? What are their lives like? Can you share a bit about both of those sides of the equation?
Yeah, definitely. So to answer that question, let me just zoom out a bit from NBU, right? So let's talk about Google as a company and its mission. Google's mission is to organize world's information and make it universally accessible and useful, right? So at NBU, we take that universally. For us, that means that it's for everyone and everywhere. And that is the heart of everything that we do. That's the heart of what we mean to build for NBU, right? So think about it this way, right? So let's take a pause and think about the next 3 years. The next new billion, next billion users coming online are coming from developing countries in Asia, Africa, or Latin America, and these people are going to experience the web in a completely different way. The few reasons for that. Let's start with the first one, which is they're mobile only. Their introduction to the internet or online world did not start from laptops or desktops. Their primary and probably the only device is the mobile phone. Yeah. And this mobile phone is not like the one that you and I have, the flagship devices, right? So these are low on power, low on memory, and low on storage. That comes with some sort of challenges to it, right? And let's say that even when they come online, the content that we have on the internet may not be relevant to them because it's probably not in their language, or it's probably not in their interest culturally. So, and also preferences of people change around the world. Maybe these people prefer what you call visuals over text, or interacting using voice over typing, because that's more convenient than checking out spellings and all those things, right? So based on all these factors, we can say it's pretty safe to say that people, the next billion users coming online are going to experience the web very differently, and that is why we are spending a lot of time with them to understand them better, and that's the element of research we do, right? So we spend time with them to understand who they are as people, and what their needs and motivations or behaviors and attitudes towards certain things are, and that gives us an ability to look at what kind of gaps do we have in technology, and then what kind of opportunities do we have for us, and we use that to help us design and develop products that work for them, and by extension for everyone. If you think about it now, if you are building it for NBU country or an NBU user, that could most probably be scaled globally and can be used by other people too. Right? So that is the essence of why we should be building for it. And also to your second question that you asked me, what impact does it have? Think about people so giving access to information and giving basically translates to giving access to opportunities. Right. So, and that's basically it. So it's more important for them to have this thing. I don't want to say than us, but it's really important for them to have this opportunity to access information that's going to shape their life, shape their livelihoods, and also increase their economic mobility.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And can you tell us more about the team at NBU? Kind of who's on this team, and who do you work with typically? Is it? I think people might be curious to understand if the teams at NBU are similar to the sort of teams we all work on in terms of the stakeholders involved and so forth. does it look like just another regular team at Google essentially? Is there something different organizationally about NBU?
Yeah, there are a couple of things over there. I can talk about the organization part, but like one thing that come to my mind is like people in NBU team, at least the ones that I work with, are highly motivated. They have this drive for innovation for these markets. I mean, they came here because they want to give back in some way. They are like self-chosen group of people who are really passionate about the problems we are trying to solve. And going to the organization part of it, right? So if you look at NBU, it could mean multiple things here. One is it could mean users, it could mean countries, it could mean our team, it could mean a set of initiatives across the company, Google. So our NBU team is a cross-functional organization. Getting into the details of it, yes, you would expect all the typical stakeholders like engineering, design, product management, program managers, and strat ops, because we are doing a lot of 0 to 1 products here, and business development people. We have a full-fledged organization here, but we're still a small team. Asif Baki, my current manager, who heads the research and insights for NBU, was one of the founders of NBU. We as a team, we look at few research areas or focus areas, however you may want to call it. I'll give you a quick overview of what they are. Niba Jain and her team, they look into understanding who these people are coming online for the first time, and what their needs are, and how can we prepare ourselves to build for that. And Emma Roche and her team focuses on understanding NBU at scale through human-centered data science. And we have Muzayin Mukhtar and her team based in Bangalore. So she and her team focuses on utilities like Files by Google or Camera Go, these kind of apps that are built for these countries. And I and my team look at economic opportunity from jobs and careers perspective. So we have really good focus on certain things that we think are important to the development of the nations, and that's what we focus on there. I can also give you a little more insight into, instead of being abstract, I can give you an example of what does this really mean, and how can this what is it? How does it translate into building a product, right? So let me take the example that you just mentioned in my introduction, Kormo. So we have Daniela McCausland and Hannah Heifel, who on my team focuses on a product called Kormo. So this is an app to help people find jobs and build careers in countries like Bangladesh, India, and Indonesia. The way we do it is we connect employers to job seekers and helping them find the best talent or best applicant for the role that they have. Okay, and on the other side, for applicants, what we do is that we provide them with tools to find the best job that fits their skill set or the credentials. So broadly, what Kormo is doing is that it's actually focusing on the unorganized labor market in NBU. Surfacing these entry-level jobs that are posted online, but for which they don't have any what you call a structured or searchable repository. We don't have that for these kind of jobs over there, right? So based on the research, what we found is that we also have a strong need for upskilling these people, and also a need for what you call referenceability. Right. So let's say if someone works at some place for some time, and you worked in multiple amazing companies in Bay Area. So when you move into a different company, I can go back and look at what have you done, and kind of giving you people you work with or your managers or your supervisors leaving great things about you as a reference, right? So we don't have that kind of thing in this unorganized labor market there. So providing those things and helping these job seekers move up the labor pyramid from unskilled to semi-skilled to skilled positions. So the key part of what we're doing here is to prepare these young, job seekers in these NBU nations who are coming online for the first time, prepare themselves for future of work, if we may call it that way. And I think on a bigger picture level, if you look at it, what we are trying to do here is we are driving the employability in NBU and generating the economic opportunity through an efficient digital labor marketplace. And that's how it's all come together, right? So yes, it's an app that helps people find jobs, but on the bigger picture, what we're trying to do here, we're driving the employability and generating economic opportunity in these markets there. And this is an example of how our team approaches problems and how we build solutions for these problems.
On that point of how you approach problems, I'm listening to you so carefully, and yet it's hard to comprehend the reality that these people have. It's hard. It's so different from what we have here, and we are living in the bubbles of bubbles. I'm just so curious to hear about how you build empathy and a deep understanding of these people. First of all, for yourselves as researchers, but also for the rest of the organization, and maybe Google as a whole. It just sounds to me like there must be unique challenges here. And another way to ask this is, I'm super curious to hear what you have in your onboarding doc for a new researcher who joins the team, and you kind of have to tell them, listen, like, good job working at Wellfront or whatever with people who have every piece of modern technology available to them, and 5G and all of these things. Now you're here. This is how things work here. What's it like? What are some of the challenges and the opportunities for researchers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Let me think about that. I think the first and foremost thing that I would say is that we are not the users, right? So we are not building for ourselves, and that's something that brings us to the point of, like, we should be we should be approaching these problems in an innovative way. We cannot just take what's successful in, like, you can't just come to me and say, like, yeah, this idea is successful in the Western world or developed world. Let's take it and implement that in the developing countries. That doesn't work well all the time, right?
Yeah.
And to your point of empathy, that is really critical. Sorry, that's really critical. And I could think of multiple ways that we are handling this situation of how we can build empathy. The first thing is, we have our teams, researchers and other stakeholders located in the countries or near the people that we build the products for. That helps us a lot. I mean, for example, Muzai and Muktas, like Muza's team is based in Bangalore, and they work on utility applications like Files by Google. And that app is like pretty popular in countries like India and Brazil and other places, right? So they know the problems firsthand. They're seeing this thing and they know how to fix that. Right? And the other way, and again, you could ask, like, yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean you could take the entire team from Sunnyvale or, like, Mountain View or Bay Area to some other country and, like, place them there, right? In those instances, what we do is we do a lot of immersions. Think of immersions as where we take a very big, not a very big, like, a very cross-functional stakeholder team to a country of interest. We go there and we spend anywhere from a week to 2 weeks sometimes. And we take every single opportunity in that 2-week time to understand the local culture, norms, and, like, understand who our users are. And, like, this could involve, like, us going to talking to people in their homes or in their stores or in the places where they work. Sometimes people even invited us to their friends' places because they don't want us to go to their home, their actual homes. So we went to really interesting places around the world to talk to them, to see how they live, and to see what their needs are when it comes to technology or, like, life in general. And when we do, but when we are doing this thing, the reason why I emphasized on the point of cross-functional stakeholders is because every single stakeholder you work with, they're all, like, amazing people. They have very diverse perspective on things, and it's important as researchers for us to understand that perspective. Right. So you as a researcher look at things in one perspective, and, like, a designer could perceive it differently versus, like, an engineer or product manager or someone else. So we have to get all these insights, especially because we do, as I mentioned, we do a lot of early stage work. So it's at this stage we need to know all these different perspectives to form a better understanding. And what we're doing here is, like, we're basically making every single person a researcher. Every stakeholder is becoming a researcher in these trips, and we are helping them build this intuition that helps them build for next billion users. That's this whole idea of what you call immersions that we do in these countries. And the other way that I could think of is studios. Studios is like, so we have this really lively, energetic, collaborative workspaces scattered across different parts of the world. So we go there. This is part of, like, part of the immersion. What we can also do is, like, hey, instead of going to a Google office, which looks like everything fancy and, like, all those things that you have in Bay Area, it's most offices look pretty much the same. So instead of going there and being in that bubble, like you said, we could go to the studios that are strategically placed in like that for you to go there, and like when you're working there, you really get a sense of what it means to work in that country or in that city. Right. So and we do a lot of sprints in those places. Like we go in with the problem space in mind. Like, hey, I want to understand how this works in this country. And in that week or two, after talking to a lot of people, doing a lot of research, what we do is like we come back and run a few days sprint where we think about, we ideate on like, what can we do? This is the problem space, there's opportunities, challenges we have, like how can we solve these problems? And then we sometimes even build and evaluate concepts over there. So by the time we come back to California, we have like, hey, here's the problem space in this specific country that we are interested in, and here's the potential ways that we can take. And oh, by the way, we also talk to people about some of these potential directions, and then this is what we learned from that. So and when we are doing this a lot, when we're doing this, as a thing that we want to help people build intuition across all the stakeholders that we have in the team, that really helps a lot in terms of like, understanding and really empathizing with the people that we're building the products for.
Yeah. Very cool. We have a bunch of questions already coming in, and thank you everyone who's sending questions. Really appreciate it. We will get to all of them. I'll stick for now with the questions around NBU's work, starting with Arcana's question. Thank you, Arcana. NBU must be an ever-shifting target. Does it make it challenging for the team to develop product? Do you feel like NBU is an ever-shifting target, or not so much? What's your take on that? What's your experience?
I mean, ever-shifting target. I mean, it depends on which countries we're speaking about, right? So if it's in India, things change a lot in the last few years with a lot of new products coming into the market and stuff, and it does actually make it challenging. But we also think about like the way we look at this problems is we look at what can be solved now for immediate future, and what can be things that are like the more strategic long-term things. So we kind of, I don't want to say foolproofing is the right term here, but we definitely think about both the ways of going it. Like, by the time we come up with a product, will this still be relevant to people there? So we do think about those things.
Yeah. I'm also curious as a follow-up to that. I think you mentioned translating some of NBU's work into the rest of the huge Google org. How does that work in terms of the timing or the process? What's your relationship to the rest of Google?
So NBU as a team, and also it's as I mentioned, like we have a lot of different NBU initiatives across the company, across Google as a company, and we tend to be, or we are placed in a place where we kind of provide them with insights, like kickstart their own small part of like investigating things in NBU nations. And the other way, that's one way of like how we interact with the rest of the company. And the other way is like when things start with an NBU, when products or features start with an NBU, they kind of outgrow what we can support. And then they kind of, I don't want to say graduate is the right term, but like they can be moved into organizations that are more relevant for them and where they can scale in a much higher level.
Yeah.
These are the two ways that I can think of where we interact with. But again, on a regular basis, like we consult and we work with a lot of teams in the company to help them A, understand who these people are, and B, help them how do we even work with these people, and how can we develop great products for them.
Next question. If you're looking, by the way, for your team for someone who is consistent in delivering results, you need to hire Tiana, because Tiana has asked me a question every single episode of UXR Conversations. I cannot stop talking about this. So proud. Tiana, thank you again for your questions. You are just astonishingly consistent in watching this show. Hi, Tejas. Thanks for sharing. I want to ask about the decision-making process of defining the next billion users at Google. In particular, how do UXRs get involved in this process? I mean, you mentioned that your manager is actually a co-founder of NBU in the first place. So in that sense, there was a researcher or someone with a background in research involved in the process of defining who these users are. But before you even get into how you serve these people, who is defining who these people are? Where to focus on? Which markets to focus on? How does that work?
So two parts of it, like yes, research plays a key role in this one. The mere fact that Asif was one of the co-founders of this NBU org, and look, this is not my first team, this is not my first company, but I feel like research plays a very huge critical role in the way we think about our products in this org, because it's critical, because we are in this uncharted territory of we don't know who these people are. So the best way to get is involve research from early on. Right. So that keeping that aside, in terms of how we define this, that's a really good question, and I think that's more to do with we have teams and stakeholders that are specific to these kind of skills, to understand like strat ops or business dev. So the quant researchers, so they kind of look at opportunities hey, we see something happening here. We want to see if that's the right signal for us, and then they involve qualitative researchers, and then we work with them to see, okay, now we see a signal, is it the right population to work with and stuff.
Yeah,
and it also other way too, because we have Niba Jain's team, who's focusing on new internet users. So they look at the trends across around the world and see these are the people who are coming more online, and these are the people we should be bringing more online. And then so it's multiple factors to it, and two of these things are the one that I just mentioned.
That makes sense. And by the way, Vijay also kind of added to this question and was also wondering what the kind of the research plan looks like. And I think you touched upon, and this is super interesting, how BizDev and other quant teams are looking at these broader trends, and that helps guide the work. Sounds like a very interesting collaboration. I'm not sure everyone is familiar with this term, but you are doing what we would consider 0-1 product development. These are 0-1 products. First of all, let's define that for everyone, just so we're on the same page. What is a 0-1 product?
I'll give you an example. So this is so think about, you don't have a proper or rights. You don't even know the right sort of questions you're trying to answer. All you know is here's a space, here's a problem space that's interesting, or that you have some signal that is important or critical, and now let's see what we can do here. From there, you take it to evolve that to an extent where this problem space, here's a bunch of different challenges that people have today. And we take those challenges and look at hey, among these challenges, which of those things are things that we should be working now, or more optimal for us to invest our resources in. And then comes this whole, okay, now we know this thing. Now let's think about what are the research questions we are trying to answer? And then comes this whole process of, now let's come up with a research plan to do all these things. So that's a fundamental difference I can look at it.
Yeah. And so how does being a researcher or research manager working on these types of products differ from non-0-1 products? Can you kind of capture the difference there?
Yeah, I think the difference again goes back to this idea of you don't know what you're working on until you get into that. So you have to have this sense of or this thought process where you think through these things from the beginning to, okay, what is the output that we're expecting from this one, and how will that impact the next step that we're taking? So there's always a next step you look into, what is the thing that I should be doing from this one, and then tie it back to the product, because as I mentioned in my initial remarks when I talked about sustainable. So we have to think about, how do I tie it back to the product? So we look at every single step. We look at what is the next step, because we know that's not going to be the last step. We're not going to end the research there. So so every single time we think about it, we think of what is the next step we're taking here, and how does it tie back to the product. And then that kind of longer term planning and strategic planning is that's key for someone working in these kind of roles. And also I also look at it. It's someone who has this ability to marry multiple products multiple methodologies creatively, right? So because when NBU, when you're working on these kind of uncharted territories, or or really early stage problem spaces, not everything is presented to you as a very well plated dish. Right. So it could be you could face a lot of challenges in terms of I don't know, it's logistics in the field, or in terms of the methodologies may not be relevant for what you're looking at. because of things that you have, and the users are different. So all these things, and resources and timelines too, to some extent. So when you have all these things factor in, we need to have someone who can creatively combine different methods, from the standard HCI methods to think about market research, ethnography, or something else. Come up with a way. Basically, what we're trying to do is someone who can creatively come up with a way to get the data from the right sort of people in these ongoing challenges that we have in the field. Is something that I always look for as a manager or a researcher working on this area.
Let's kind of stick to this this line of conversation here, and kind of combine your work at NBU with your more recent work on UX coffee hours. I'm wondering what you feel like it takes for a researcher to succeed working on these types of projects, and what advice do you have for people who want to get into a role such as the sort of roles you have on your team, or other teams or other companies that are working on these 0 to 1 products in very underserved populations in developing countries? Any advice for people out there, which is just like the big things you see that really make a difference to the quality of your practice, the quality of your research, your ability to succeed in this space?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
I know that's a big question.
Yeah, I'm just trying to process the question there now. I think the first and foremost thing, if it's about what kind of advice I give to people, yes, I do get this question asked on UX coffee hours every time I talk to someone. So this looks like a really interesting role. Can you tell me more about how I can get something like this? Right. So I do have a framework, or a few steps that I look into. One is, the first and foremost is understand and acknowledge that we are not the user. You should be that's the foundation of it. We are not the user, and then acknowledge that our intuition, as it is trained today, is not equipped to build for the next billion users. So unless we acknowledge that, we won't be open to learning new things, right? So we have to acknowledge that first. Our intuition is not built to help us build for next billion users. And the next thing is, once you acknowledge this thing, you'll be able to learn new things and build that intuition that would help you get there, right? And then as you are learning new things in the field, or in this process, you will have to be really scrappy on things. I mean, I'm not saying pull down the research trigger and then just do everything scrappy, but in the field, you really have to be scrappy in a way. We have to have a good balance of hey, this is going to give me good data, but with the given certain situations that we have in the field, this is how I would creatively do this like this. So someone who is able to do that, and someone who's able to think through the product side of things, because ultimately what we're trying to do is come up with a product that will help them build this thing. So the idea of thinking, a product-based thinking is what that I would say is really critical for someone, where, okay, I see this opportunity here, but how do I solve that with the product? Do we even have to solve that with the product? Or if so, and how do we solve that? So someone who can tie it back to the product innovation or product-based thinking is something that I would probably advise people to look at. One is acknowledge that your intuition is not trained for this one, and B, build that intuition by doing a lot of these. I mean, if to get more tactical on methodologies, or more tangible on methodologies, I would say contextual inquiries and one-on-one interviews in the field, in the lab. It could also be a lot of surveys, but surveys is a very tricky part for this one. And we have different ways that we're working on that. But and then we do a lot of participatory co-designs workshops with our stakeholders in the field. So again, different kind of methods, ethnographic methods, that you can go into the field, observe them, understand them, and think about what is that thing that they need would make their lives better. And then coming back with hey, here's a bunch of things that we can take and build a product based on that. Is it someone who can tie all these things together? Is something that would could be more successful in roles like this.
Thank you for that. We actually have a couple more questions that I'd love to get to, because I just thank you for everyone taking the time to ask them. So I want to be respectful of that. The first one is it's a tough situation, I think, to be in, which a lot of people will feel that they've been through similar things, I'm sure. From Vishal, thank you for starting UX Coffee Hours, Tejas. I think it's a wonderful initiative. What advice do you have for an aspiring researcher who wasn't able to land an internship. I'm graduating next month, and today I'm starting a personal project for social good since I didn't have any luck with my applications. I've been anxious about my steps lately. I'm sure a lot of people are feeling this way right now. It's tough. We are in a crazy global pandemic, which is affecting work and life everywhere. Do you have any advice for Vishal, who seems to be, doing everything he can
Yep.
to break into research? What have you got for him?
Yeah. First of all, I would say that's pretty inspiring that Vishal is thinking about doing something on his own, to help beef up his portfolio and like beef up his experience. While you're doing that, Vishal, I would say think about what kind of experience are you getting out of the work that you're just doing. Yes, it's social good. That's awesome, and I'm a big fan of that. And from the research methodologist perspective, think about. I'm assuming you're doing more end-to-end work there, right? Because it's something that you started, and you're gonna go test and all those things over there to build and test and all those things. So when you're doing it, I would recommend you getting this complete end-to-end experience and think about what kind of methodologies would help you get the right data, and then move you from one step of your research to the second step. And while doing that, just don't throw in methodologies because you know them. Only use them wisely. Like, use them. Yeah, just start with secondary research, because oftentimes we kind of look down on this step. But like starting with secondary research helps a lot in terms of understanding what we know today and what can be like what should we be doing the next. So start with that, and then think about what kind of problems you're trying to solve, and see what methods are the right ones for you to do that. And then when you start applying for jobs, think about a great story. I mean, my advisor from my grad school, Dan Cosley, always used to say this thing: we're all in the business of telling great stories. So it's like when you are going to an interview, it's about telling great story. So what kind of story are you planning to tell or trying to tell from your work you're doing today? And is that story that's impactful, that's going to show, hey, Vishal identified this problem and thought that he would solve this by identify these questions, and thought he'd solve this by methodologies that he presented here, and then this is how we analyze the data, and then this is basically what he learned, and this is what impact he had after building this product. That's, I mean, if you're building it for social good, it's definitely going to change one person's life at the least, right? So it's going to change that. So capture that and make sure you tell that thing as part of your story. So build a great story. That's the best we can do now in the stage.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful advice, and I would add that, real talk, it might be harder for you to get the opportunity to tell your story if you, for example, don't have an internship. That's just the reality. I think a lot of hiring managers are looking at your resume. They are assessing whether you have experience, and some of them may put less emphasis on your application compared to others because you don't. That just means you have to find alternate ways to get the opportunity to tell your story. And simply by asking a question here and by putting yourself out there and getting in touch with people directly, I think that's a wonderful way to hopefully get the chance to tell your story to more people. And I'm convinced, based on our short interaction here and what you've been sharing, that you will impress people with what you're up to. And I do believe that being, the hardest worker in the room and putting the effort into important things and difficult problems that are meaningful to our society, that will pay off. So keep your chin up and keep on doing what you're doing, and hopefully you'll get to tell your story. We have a couple more things here to talk about. Let's see. So Vijay is asking, how did you land on this opportunity, and what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now? Is there anything you can share about how you first entered into NBU as an org, and both as a researcher and a manager? What are some of the challenges kind of on your mind right now?
So in terms of landing on this opportunity, right? So as I think I touched upon this thing during my the early part too, is this one is like having just genuine passion towards who you're building these products for, helps a lot in terms of you'll have this drive to really push the products forward. And B, ability to think in the product perspective, like to think about the problems from a product perspective helps a lot too, because we are in the business of building products in some way. So how do you take an opportunity and then what kind of product do you think about building it? So that kind of helped me, I believe so. My passion, or my interest in these areas, and then the ability to link it back to the product. I demonstrated using some of the examples I had in the past, the things that I built on the side, again, like Vishal or Vijay talking about. So even the previous person Vishal talked about. So I did a lot of side projects. The side projects are things that I worked on my own, and no one asked me for that. I just thought hey, I want to do something for my town, or I want to do something for certain things. So I did those things on the side, and that kind of built a really good portfolio of how I can translate my research into products. And when I went and talked to Asif and Nipa, I believe, again, I don't want to speak for them, but I believe that was something that kind of was more interesting to them.
We are essentially out of time, although it's kind of random, but still, I just have to ask you one more thing before we finish. How should I put this? I feel very fortunate. I think we just have astounding opportunities here to work on some foundational, just such important problems, to make such an impact. You and I, for sure, are privileged in that sense. And I have to ask you, these days you're mentoring a lot of people, you're helping them grow in their careers, maybe break into UX research, maybe advance in UX research. When you think of your own career, where hypothetically, of course, where do you go after working on something as foundational and as important as the next billion users? Kind of, again, just thinking of our privilege to work on these sort of problems, what do you do after that? What do you tell yourself when it comes to how do I continue to grow? How do I continue to evolve my career? What is the level up from that? I'm really curious to hear your answer on that, because I struggle to imagine the more important or the cooler thing you could be working on. Do you ever kind of contemplate on that a bit?
I mean, if I have a chance of doing this forever, I'll just do it.
Yeah.
Because I really enjoy what I'm doing now. And in terms of the level up, or whatever the way you look at it, I think it's about being this thematic leaders, or thematic thought partners, that if you can call it that way, who you'll have people coming to you and talk about I want to work on economic opportunity and in these areas. So that kind of reputation, I think. I mean, fundamental point I think I'm trying to say, Noam, is I'm going to do the same thing, and if I can, I'll continue doing the same thing. I wouldn't probably trade this for anything else. It's because it's immensely satisfying from my inner soul. And B, how do I grow in this one is trying to be that thought partner for the people that I work with and people that I don't work with, internal and external. Right? So that's where I look at myself when down the line, a few years from now.
Awesome. Tejas, thank you so much for joining me today. That was a really fun and inspiring conversation. Again, for people who are interested in being a mentor or a mentee, please go to uxcoffeehours.com. I know I will be doing that this weekend, and become a mentor or become a mentee. It'll do wonders for your career. Is there anything else you wanted to add, or how people can reach out to you, or what they should be reaching out for?
Yeah, I have my coffee hours on UX Coffee Hours, so you can just go and schedule time with me. And I'm also available on LinkedIn. Send me an email or a message if you have anything specific that you want me to answer. But I think, and thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a pleasure talking to you. I really enjoyed the conversation and great questions from the people. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, man. And again, thank you for your questions and your comments. I'm sorry we couldn't get to everything. Please feel free to message either of us to talk more about what we're up to. If you're looking for me, these are my details. You know where to find me. Have a wonderful weekend. And by the way, yes, there is another conversation happening tomorrow, because I am just addicted to these conversations and it's fun. So join me tomorrow and subscribe for all of the updates about future conversations. There are a few more coming, so get excited. Bye for now. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you so